This week on the TT show, RDNA 4 GPU performance may be slower than expected. Intel Battlemage GPU updates. A gaming monitor that flew under everyone's radar. The US government wants AI to go nuclear. Microsoft's game-changing Pixel technology. Copilot to run locally on PCs. The Dune MMO. GTA 6 30 FPS on PS5 Pro. An embarrassing photo of space junk. Digital Xbox spotted in the wild, an Eerie robot, and an almost deadly piece of space junk. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT show. My name is Jak Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta Andriadis, gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown.
Hello, my friend.
How are we?
Not too bad, not too bad. We have another, as every week, a jam-packed week of news.
I don't know, even like when there's Easter break or, holidays or whatever, just there's always stuff happening.
The news doesn't stop for anybody. It is a 24-hour cycle that is, it's really debilitating at some stage. Like if you take a few days off, I feel like I'm out of the loop because we live in the trenches. Because
you have to like follow what's happening as well as report on what's happening as well as report on things that that need to be announced at certain times and
and if you miss an event like I don't know WWDC or something like that or Gamescom, like I didn't really actually look at much of the Gamescom stuff. That was recently, wasn't it?
That was like last year. But
GDC.
Yeah, like I know what you mean. Like but it's like if you miss like, let's say you miss like CES, like the whole thing, like you just like phoned off, then you turn on, you're like, what did I miss? And it's like, well, where do you begin?
That's a bad one to miss, I reckon. Like I think I could get away with missing. I think it was GDC that was recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, GDC. I mean, we covered like a few of the main things, like like the AI game stuff, like those demos and things like that. Because GDC is more like for game developers, to do whatever they do.
Yeah, doing their best work. Do you want to start this episode off with some GPU stuff? This looks like pretty interesting for mid-range gamers out there that should know what to expect and what's around the corner.
Yeah, so by the end of this year, we may be in a situation where we have the next gen Radeon GPUs on the market.
Ooh. The
next gen Intel Arc GPUs on the market, as well as the next gen NVIDIA GeForce RTX 50 series on the market.
That's
now,
a bigger
if that's the case, what would happen is we'd have the 5090 and the 5080, like the flagships, right? The beasts. And then, but where it gets interesting or different is that AMD and Intel are doing something different. Now, AMD apparently had like a flagship GPU, like a successor to their 7900 XTX, their most powerful current GPU. That was also going to be like chiplet, but more advanced chiplet design. But that has been shelved because it wasn't going to be ready for, so they're actually skipping the top SKU or like the flagship next generation coming up. So essentially RDNA 4, which we don't know too much about what is going to be exactly. Like everybody's assuming that, it's either going to be 3 nanometer, 4 nanometer node, because the current RDNA, obviously die shrinks and things like that. But there's also rumors based on the PS5 Pro stuff that it's going to be massive ray tracing upgrade because the PS5 Pro rumors say like, ray tracing performance 2 to 3 times. And the speculation is that because that's based on RDNA 4. So,
okay.
Which would be cool because AMD is due for like a, like, hey, now ray tracing is on par with GeForce sort of thing.
Okay.
So basically, April 1st is the day where people just post crazy things in terms of fake news and whatnot, and
I hate
have a bit of fun. But there is like a leaker that is known for like Radeon leaks called All the Watts. Now, if you see my story, he posted basically like emojis, like a whole string of emojis, as just to present his information in a fun way, and the internet can decipher it within 2 seconds. I mean, it looks like you look at it and you're like, what does that even mean? But it includes mobile GPUs and desktop GPU performance. So essentially, the top range RDNA 4 or the next gen AMD GPU, which is going to be Navi 48, is like the code name for the chip. So you see in his like emojis, like if we put that up on the screen, or if you're watching on YouTube, it's got like 48 is not as powerful as 31, which means that the top of the range of the RDNA 4 GPU is not going to be as powerful as the current 7900 XTX.
Why?
But it also, and then it says it's going to be more powerful than the cut down 31. Now the cut down 31 is the 7900 GRE that they recently launched, which is it's nowhere near as powerful as the top of the range one.
Yeah.
Or it could be the 7900 XT, which hopefully it's that. But essentially all it means is that their top GPU is only going to be at worst 14% faster than the current 7800 XT, which, or at best, put its performance higher than the 7900 XT or around about this 4070 Ti Super performance. Now, that's not super exciting because it's like, okay, you're releasing a new GPU that's kind of just slots into where we've got existing cards already servicing that performance level.
Yeah.
So the only thing they can do, or not necessarily can do, but like the only thing they really could do to make it exciting or a game changer or to shake anything up would be to release it at, that sort of mid-range price point, like, replace the 7800 XT or even release it at a lower price than that. If it is, more efficient, if it is like a mid-range GPU, cheaper to produce, because there is rumors that it's still going to use GDDR6 memory instead of the new GDDR7 that's going to be on the GeForce 50 series. So there's things they can do. But also then there's like a mainstream GPU in that, which is like Navi 44. And in the images, it basically says that it's going to be more powerful than the 7600 XT, which is their current mainstream GPU, but not as powerful as the 7700 XT, which would be like about a 4060 Ti performance for their mainstream GPU, which also was probably even less exciting. Because you expect, I don't know, like if there's like a 4060, you want it to be as powerful as like at least a 3070, if you know what I mean? Like if it's
definitely.
a generation upgrade, you want it to be better than the more expensive from the previous generation. Like, if you look at it as like steps, like, hey,
yeah, of course.
You got a 5080 should be more powerful than a 4090, right?
Yeah.
A 5070 should be kind of like a 4080 sort of performance, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So it's, so based on that, like I said, like it's going to come, like it'll come down to things like price and like ray tracing and efficiency and other things that aren't just raw performance. If there's like more AI in it, then they do AI upscaling now to improve FSR or something with it. Like there's just on paper, it's not going to be that exciting.
Is this enough to attract buyers, do you think?
Not necessarily, because I think like what makes it, because it's crowded, right? Which brings us to like Battlemage, which is Intel's next gen GPU. So there's like shipping, like the latest news is that like it's popped up on shipping manifests, like 2 different GPUs. And this means that it's being sent out for certification or testing or final thing. So basically, potentially it's being sent to like, Intel's partners like ASRock or Sparkle that create those funky blue GPUs that look really cool. And so they're potentially preparing like the next gen GPU. Now, Intel has spent all their time in the past year just releasing driver updates and making Arc better. And so now it's in a pretty good place. But the thing is, the next generation or the top Battlemage, which would be like, I don't know what they're going to call it, like, because you got the Arc a 7070. They might just do like what AMD and Nvidia do and just call it the 870, or like, just do a numerical increase and it would just still be Arc. But Battlemage is the architecture. So like the top of the range one here is like it's said to have like improved ray tracing, but still only that they've been targeting like 4070 levels of performance, with the lower end one targeting around about the 4060. So they're coming out with kind of like a mid-range and entry-level GPUs like refreshes this year, right? And if they release them at a low price, they can force a little bit of competition. But the thing is, like, you've got AMD doing that, you've got Intel doing that, you've got existing GPUs already doing that. So, basically the mid-range market's going to be flooded with options.
Yeah,
and
it's just more of the same.
Like if you look at like the US like $400 to $600 price range, you've got 4 options. You've got the 7700 XT, you've got the 7800 XT, you've got that new 7900 GRE, you've got the 4070, you've got the 4070 Super from NVIDIA. So you got 2 from NVIDIA, you got 3 GPUs from AMD already in that sort of like pricing bracket. And they're all like within, like if you step up like 10% performance of each other sort of thing. So then if you add 3 more GPUs into that pricing bracket,
it's going to be
flooded. As you run out old stock and then you got the new cards. Like, it's not that exciting, if you know what I mean? Like, it's like if the Battlemage comes out and you're like, okay, I'll pick that up, and then you look, oh well, the previous gen one is being discounted and it's roughly the same performance, so I'll just buy that one instead. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of what happens in some cases.
Well, that's what happens in really any kind of market, right? Is people are always looking for the lowest, lowest price thing but also getting the most performance out of it.
And then, and like it's with like phones and tablets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then when you go to the flagship level, right, it's all about getting the best, right? So like somebody that's interested in the top iPhone or the top Galaxy phone is not interested in the previous gen, right?
No.
They're like, okay, I'm going to get this $2,000 phone.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's whatever. Like I'm going to get the best of the best. So what's happening is that these companies are now leaving the door open for at least a year for NVIDIA to be alone with potentially 3 GPUs, right? So if like NVIDIA may just decide to just be conservative with their specs, and just do a refresh like maybe next year, or like, it's all a game of like, like you're going to get the most powerful, but you don't want to like hurt yourself for like the following generation if you can't keep that sort of pace of performance increase. Like you want to plan it out, the cadence. So like they could have 3 GPUs, that 5070, if it's more powerful than a 5080, let's say, assuming like best case scenario. Then you've got a 5080 that's more powerful than the 4090. Then you've got a 5090 that's in a league of its own, right? So they could have 3 GPUs that are essentially unmatched, or there's no competition, there's no equivalent, unless like you buy like a previous gen, the current RDNA 3 flagship, like the 7900 XTX for cheaper, or whatever the case is, if that price drops. But basically there's not going to be a new GPU from AMD to compete with potentially like 3 GPUs from NVIDIA, as well as Intel as well.
Yeah, I suppose they'll play, and this is NVIDIA who I'm talking about here, is because there is no direct competition, they don't want to almost shoot themselves in the foot, and this is just my speculation, shoot themselves in the foot with a massive performance hike with a beefed up, what the previous rumors were like, it's 60% faster than the 4090. So they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot, because let's say the next, like the 9000 series of AMD cards, let's say they do come out with or even later in the 8000 series, a card that does compete with like 4090 level performance, then NVIDIA will be able to go, okay, well, there is a 5090, but then we can even do a refresh, or in the 6000 series, here's a 50% performance increase. Like they're just they're holding back a little bit. I would say they're going to hold back a little bit because there is no direct competition. Then they'll wait for the direct competition and be like, okay, here it is. Boom. Yeah.
The only downside is that then they can just charge whatever they want, so to speak, because like these cards are also like, you know, like AI capable, right? So
what's
like
that?
you can buy, yeah, exactly right. You can buy like a 4080 Super, right? And that gives you like, there was like a GPU the other day where like this Gigabyte put like how much like tops, you know, the AI tops, whatever, how they measure performance, like 400, 500 tops of AI performance. Like that's like the metric. So like these GPUs are going to have like those as like a metric. So people are also going to be buying these GPUs to run AI locally as well. So then if these are going to be the most powerful, then we could be in a situation where they can just charge obscene amounts for them. And as great as these cards are going to be, like, you know, if you look at them just in terms of like performance and features and capabilities, you're like, oh, that's a fantastic GPU. But then you look at the price and you go, well, that's way too expensive, or whatever the case is. Like it's always like the tricky thing is like the 4090 is a beast, but it's so expensive.
Yeah. You need that. You need some direct competition to balance out the pricing and performance. So what do we think is, like, if you were to make a bit of a prediction here for the 5000 series, do you think we're going to see a 40% increase in performance with the 5090, or do you think they're gonna dial it back?
I think the flagship will still be like a 50% performance increase. I think they've kind of just like locked it in because they've like that sort of architecture has been ready for a while now, and they were probably expecting it was designed to compete with something, and then because it's all alone now, they can decide to scale things back a little bit. But I don't think they're going to like go too hard. Like I think it's also perception as well. Like if you're on top and you're, you know, like you maintain that dominance by just having, you know, something that's just like totally outclassing anything else.
Yeah, I do like that. It's just a shame that there isn't direct competition to it. Like Nvidia is just too good. There isn't any direct competitor that is going to push the price down or performance up. So maybe we'll see it in like the 9000 series from AMD. Do you think that's possible?
That's the expectation. The expectation is that RDNA 5, which is already well into development, is going to be the flagship is going to be like this multi-chip powerhouse, right? That's going to be able to compete with whatever the top 5090 is, whatever the case is. And they potentially could be bringing that release closer. So like there is like speculation that because they're skipping like the top, they're just going to get like the RDNA 4 like mid-range GPUs out, and then go straight to RDNA 5 like next year. You know what I mean? But then like if NVIDIA is working on a 2-year cycle, there's rumors that they're going to bring their next gen back a year as well. Like, you know, there's always like speculation that's floating around. That's a lot of it's not, you can't really substantiate it. You can just say, okay, yeah, maybe that's true, because a lot of it sounds like educated guesses. Yeah, no, that makes sense. But the rumor is that Blackwell, which is the NVIDIA architecture, will actually power 2 generations of gaming GPUs. So there is going to be like a Blackwell refresh, which might be just like a super series, or could be like the 6090 or the 6080. Because in the past, like NVIDIA's had like architectures that have gone across a couple of generations. Yeah. Like Maxwell or whatever the case is. And then there's like a more refined version. This is... So it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the mid-range being like inundated with options, but that's like, you know, it depends on like, it's just like it becomes a little bit not exciting when you see like a known leaker. This is still like rumor, but saying like the performance is not as good as the flagship. Let's say they were to do, because the 7900 XTX, the current AMD flagship, is a powerful 4K GPU. It's got 24 gigs of VRAM. Yeah. At that level, the ray tracing, just because of the amount of raw horsepower it's got is actually decent. Like it's not at the like the 4080 or 4090 levels, nowhere near, but it's it outperforms like a 4070 in ray tracing or whatever the case is. But that's like $1,000 GPU, which its price is coming down now. But like if they were to have that that level of performance and then say now it's 500 at half the price, and then it's like, well, hold on a second, why would I get a 4070 Super? Why would I get, like that's like a like a game changer. People say like, holy crap, this is the best $500 GPU. And then people would go, well, instead of buying like a $300 4060, if they're in the know, if they're educated, they'll say like, well, if I can save up a bit more and get that's like got triple the performance and it's going to last me longer. If it was at that sort of like current gen flagship level performance for that price, it even though it's not a top of the range GPU, it could still be as exciting if it managed to like shake up
the price stack. Yeah. No, that is that's interesting. Yeah, the price really does, and of course, but like the price really does dictate how exciting the card is at the same time.
Yeah, except when you get to like the flagship level, then you're looking at just Halo products like phones, laptops, GPUs, PCs.
Yeah.
It's like these things are just thousands of dollars, luxury items, and you expect, and then how it performs matters more than the price when you get to that level. When you're at the entry level, then it's like, well, it's price to performance. It's like, how does it perform? Yeah, like that's important, but also how much are you paying for that performance?
Is that all that you had on this one? Should we move on to the next story? Let's jump to the gaming monitor that no one reported on. So I came across this I follow display specifications. It's essentially like a website that's a directory for every single display that comes out. It lists all the specs for all of them. They do a great job of keeping up to date. And they wrote in their article that this one was grossly underreported. And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at it. It's not my personal favorite like style of monitor, but it's still interesting nonetheless.
This is like the too big.
Oh yeah, it's way too big. But I did a quick Google of it, and there was like 3 links on it, and they were mostly like forum links. So I thought, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll write this up. This is kind of interesting. So what is it? It is the Acer Predator X49X. It was originally announced in December.
Right.
And it is a 49-inch. Here's the whacked resolution for you: 5,120 by 1440 with an 1800 R curvature, 250 nits of typical brightness. It's an OLED display, 1000 nits peak brightness, HDR10 display, HDR True Black 400, 0.03 ms quick response time, and a 240 hertz refresh rate. Now, look, the size is egregious. I've used these before. They're hilarious.
The 49-inch, they're just massive, right?
They're hilarious. I think they're funny. When you set them up, you're like, what have I got myself into here? This is
That's exactly it, right?
What am I doing? Yeah, I think it's really specific for what you want.
Like a video editor, and you had like an editing suite, or like with a and that's pretty much the only thing on the desk apart from a few, keyboard, mouse, and whatever else. Then I really would for gaming, it's only certain games that actually look okay when you get to that sort of.
Yeah, what is it? It's 32:9 aspect ratio. Yeah, that's. There's not much support out there for 32:9. Let's just say that. Or, native support at least. So if you don't have native support in your game, then you get all of the, what is it called? It's all like stretched. Borders. It's all stretched. or
But then you
borders.
can play, or borders, yeah.
Yeah, but look, if you buy a 49-inch monitor and you're playing 16:9 games on it, you have wasted your money. I'm just saying, like that's a mad decision, Costa. You imagine sitting in front of 49 inches and you're just playing on 16:9 and you're just playing like Overwatch or whatever. It's got to look ridiculous. But what I wanted to talk about with this one is these specs are nice. I want to get my hands on something like this. 0.03 ms response time is juicy. It is, as a
like
FPS gamer, after you use 0.03 ms response time, you don't want to go back to anything that is above 1 ms. And 240 hertz refresh rate at, it's not 5K resolution.
Well,
it's
it's
just shy. Is it over 4K? Or is that the equivalent of 4K?
the pixels.
Yeah.
Let's do some calculating.
Yeah, what is it? It'd be PPE. Is it PPI for that? Because 5,120 by 1440, that should make it. I reckon that's around.
So it's 8.3 million for 4K. Let me do the calculation for this. Just got the calculator open. So 5,120 by 1440. 7.37.
So
pixels.
just shy.
So just shy of 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking at two
1440p.
Two 1440p full size monitors, just 27 inches, just stacked, joined together.
What I want to see out of these displays, and after the ones that I've reviewed, is it's such a narrow display. It's because it's only 1440p high.
Yeah.
It's so. I mean, it does wrap around your peripheral vision, but I kind of want it to be thicker. You know,
But then you change the aspect ratio, then you get into a whole can of worms.
I know.
Like how on laptops you got 16:10.
Yeah.
Or Apple, 16:10, and even then you're like, certain things like games you either play with a tiny black border or you stretch it a tiny bit and you can't. And it's kind of like you can get used to that. But you know what I mean? Like 16:10 is it's just the longer or the taller display, and it's good for a lot of apps because it's just that little bit taller.
I want to see it 4K.
They could have done it by 1600 or something.
I want to see it by 2160. I want it would be a wild display because the resolution would be insane. Like imagine if it was 21:60 high, that would mean it would be 7680 wide. That's that
same
Samsung
ratio.
That's that Samsung display that I saw.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that these 49-inch ones, it would be a little not stupid, but it's just no point in them doing a dual 4K version or an 8K version because you're limiting it to what people that own a 4080 or 4090 or a 7900 XTX.
Yeah.
And even then,
they're suffering.
You're not necessarily going to be running games natively, really.
Yeah, at 240, there's not a chance.
There's not a chance, yeah. And just the cost of developing a display with that sort of pixel density at that size.
Yeah, I mean,
because I think that sort of this size, the 27-inch or the double 27, the 49-inch 32:9, 1440p is fine, but as soon as you try and increase the height of it, then you would want a higher pixel density.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's an interesting monitor that no one really reported on. It is so use case specific. I'll just rattle off some other specs on it here. It's got 2 times HDMI 2.1 port inputs, 1 times DisplayPort 1.4, 1 times USB-C port with 90-watt power delivery. This is actually a feature that I'm really enjoying on the higher end monitors is the 90-watt power delivery via the USB-C. That's nice. It just gives me another, because most things that I need to charge are on USB-C now that I've moved to the iPhone 15. It's not something I use all the time, but I definitely have used it a few times when it's there. So it's just nice to have another USB-C port that isn't on my PC that I have to run the cable. Like most of my cables are like 1 meter, so just to be able to plug it in. It looks dicky, and it makes it like, it doesn't make the display look fantastic having another cable coming out from the I/O at the back, but 90 watts of power delivery that can charge the majority of things, like the large majority of things easily, even or maybe even some like Surface Books or something like that. You might get a really,
you can even charge like that's right, like an actual device, like a tablet or laptop or.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm loving the shift into OLED here with high refresh rates, low response times, and the USB-C ports. I think it's going to be nice. We don't have a price on this. I'm going to imagine that it's going to be north of $1,000 easily.
Easy, yeah.
Easily. I'm thinking maybe $14.99 or something like that. It's going to be an expensive monitor, and the people that are looking into 49 inches, they already know what they're going to use it for. Like, I would never recommend a 49 inch to, like, I don't know, a random on the street that is like, oh, I'm into games. And I'm like, oh, get this monitor. Like, you blow your mind. Like, it's not gonna.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. Like, it's just like the normal 21:9 ultra wide or the standard ultra wide.
Yeah,
it's like that sweet spot.
Yeah, I'm currently reviewing Samsung's. I think it's the G8, which uses the 2nd generation OLED pixel technology, and the text fringing on that really drives me mad. It is like, I have MSI's what one is it? It's the 4K 240 hertz right next to it, and that uses the 3rd generation pixel technology. And if you put the same, like, say, a news post from Tweaktown on the MSI and then one on the Samsung, you can, like, I even got my girlfriend to come in and be like, what do you see here? And they're like, she goes, the Samsung text is like blurry. Like, is
that because it's a lower resolution? That
as well. It's a lower resolution, but the text fringing is noticeable. Like, you can actually see the performance jump between 2nd generation and 3rd generation. So they're coming along. Is because it's my main problem with these OLEDs is because I do so much word processing stuff that after a while you're looking at it like you got squinty eyes. You're like, oh, what's
because IPS is always going to be like a
nice
quality IPS panel for just text and whatever is just so good for text.
Yeah,
like,
it's
you
great.
Can't beat it. It's just crisp. No,
I just want the colors.
Like, OLED can get close, but it's still not there as like a really good IPS panel for just straight up like text.
Let's jump to something a little bit more fun here. Let's go to Dune Awakening. I want to talk about their approach, because this game, I mean, I love MMOs, but I hate getting disappointed by them. But hearing the developers, Funcom, talk about how they're going to be setting up the world really made me excited about it. And this is a game that we were talking about, I don't think it was a few episodes ago, right?
Yeah, that's right. When it was like when they announced the trailer for it.
Yes.
You were a little bit skeptical.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I'm just skeptical because it's an MMO and
right.
it is survival. And I have never been disappointed more by a genre in gaming than MMOs. And I believe, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. I think MMOs are the most difficult genre of game to make. What do you think of that?
Yes, because there's a template for it, and it's kind of like grinding is built into it. You know what I mean? Like longevity is like built into like an MMO. Like if you selling a game that's an MMO, you're selling a game that should theoretically offer you 1,000 hours to do something.
Yes.
Right, to be able to play for 6 months and continue playing for that time, regularly. The problem with that is that then you've got to design mechanics that are intentionally a long tail before you get a reward or a satisfying thingo. And then you've got like World of Warcraft, which is the most popular MMO. That sort of like template as kind of considered what an MMO is, and then so how do you break free of that? And this, I think, like what makes this one more exciting is that because it's got the survival element, and because Conan was more of a survival game or multiple, like it could be like whatever you wanted it to be to a degree, versus a straight up like MMO like World of Warcraft, which is like story driven, quest driven, class driven, job driven, like whatever you choose to be, like you got to train this and that. And so I don't know. Like I mean, I think like it depends on what you want out of an MMO. If you want it to be like an RPG, like a World of Warcraft, like story, character, class, leveling, and skills, and all that sort of like RPG stuff, then I don't think it's super difficult to make one of those games. But then what's difficult is actually making it good enough that people want to play it for months.
Yeah.
As opposed to like just playing it for like a week or two.
Yeah, because usually what happens is and I've done this so many times, is a new MMO comes out, it looks wicked, I play the absolute crap out of it, and then you get to endgame and there's nothing to do. There's no endgame content, there's no, like, everyone's maxed out, I've got the best gear, or it just turns into like, I know it's one of your favorite games, but it just turns into like a loot like grabber, essentially. You're like Diablo. Like we're just fighting so over gear.
Here's your 4 things that you can do to get gear. Or basically just grind for materials. And that's like, that's always like the hard bit. Like, I don't know how you design like a brilliant version of that. But like when I play like an MMO, let's say BioWare made like Star Wars, The Old Republic.
Oh yeah.
Remember that came out kind of like as like, here's our World of Warcraft, but for Star Wars. And they like all the character interactions in that game were like voice acted.
Yeah,
like,
wow.
Like novels worth. And that game has like, you can choose like a Sith Lord, you can choose like an Imperial spy, you can choose like a Jedi, you can choose just like a officer of the Republic or whatever the case is. And each one had like its own like story as well as like the grand story of the world. And it was, if you play that game just for story, it was really, really good. But then you could get like bogged down in like just grinding on these like massive planets, just like MMO stuff. But when I got to the end of that, and then like you end up at like this, one of the main city hubs, and there's people running around, and I'm like, what are you supposed to do now? And then, like started like chatting to random people, like, what's the end game? Like, what do you do now? And they talk about like, you run this, you run that, you get better gear and stuff like that. And I was like, I just quit. I'm like, that's not what I was doing. Like, I played that for the story. I played that for the journey. Like, I liked leveling. I liked getting some new gear, but I wasn't interested in the mechanics of the game. Like to the degree that I was like, well, that's what I want now. I want to spend 10 times as amount of time doing all that stuff instead of like the 50 hours of just the story, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it depends on what you want out of it too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think you were talking about World of Warcraft is I think a lot of those players, and I'm guessing a lot of those players, they really enjoy the mechanics of the game. When a new dungeon comes out or something like that, people are rushing to find all the ins and outs of how this boss works, where you should be standing, what abilities that you or spells that you need to be casted at certain times. It's like it's almost like a it's an adult puzzle. I kind of look at it.
That's right.
In a way,
there's people that play that game that just do the role play.
Yeah, that's true.
They're
Yeah,
crafters. Like they just go out and gather materials and they craft certain things.
yeah, yeah.
And that's predominantly what they love doing.
Yeah, I
There's
think
people that play it just for the story. Like, that's the problem, is that you have to cater to so many different types of players with an MMO.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. And that's why I think this Dune game, it needs to have a balance of both for it to be, for it to survive. Because the survival mechanics are, I mean, I think they're self-evident because Arrakis is it's a terrible planet. It's not like there's heaps going on there besides worms, spice, and everyone's trying to survive. So the premise is it's built in that it's going to be a survival thing. I think it would be weird if the game wasn't survival, but it makes me worried at the same time when they try and do too many things at once, or they're trying to do too many things at once and then they don't master any of those aspects. However, during this interview, they said that one of the approaches with player versus player, we wanted to take in Dune was to pull people away from competing and fighting over bases and destroying each other's things. So games like Rust, Ark, and even DayZ, that is the majority of what people are doing. Is like, they find some massive castle or whatever base that is built by players, and then you get like a horde of players to just come and attack it. It is very cool, but I can see how it would get very repetitive, especially if there's no what's the right word for it? There's no like end satisfaction besides like you dominating that server.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then that also sucks for new players that get in there, because then you get like, oh no, that's that horde of
I prefer this because like I don't like PvP when it gets into that level. See, like I like survival games like let's say you look at Valheim, which is the Dark Souls of survival games.
Yeah.
And there's some of these biomes that just like you go out, you get one hit and you just lose everything. You're like, what the hell happened there? But like the sanctuary of your base, like or like there's Grounded, there's Conan as well. The sanctuary of like building your base and I like that side of it, like just building like a huge base or like having that, and then going out and having the danger be separate.
Yes.
To your base.
Yeah.
So when they talk about this and saying like they want PvP to be fighting over resources on Arrakis, which is actually
it's perfect.
More true to the source material
Yes.
than people fighting over like outposts or like trying to destroy, like trolling. In a sense, like it's like the video game equivalent of just going out and destroying for the sake of destruction because it's a mechanic. Whereas making it fighting over resources, especially in Dune, is it's more thematic and true to the source material, because you're fighting over spice, you're fighting over water, you're fighting over whatever the case is, like even if it's just crafting materials or whatever.
I hope you can harvest the water from your defeated enemies. Like, how they do that in Dune 2?
Oh, yeah.
And they're all like,
cool.
Ew, what are they doing? And it's like every drop is precious. So here's what has been said. Players will be able to see spice blows as world events on the map. I really like that. These spice events will be visible to all players, creating a sense of urgency to travel to the location, gather as much spice as possible, and then transport their haul back to their home bases while fighting off other players. That is exactly the same as the source material, and I think would make for a really interesting and fun combat loop. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, well,
I
a
think-
loop with how you interact with the world, like going to a location, harvesting spice while competing with other players that also want that spice. And then because you're going to get raiders, right? Like you're going to get people that just be like, all right, well, we'll let them get all the spice and then we'll get them on the road. And then like as they're going back to their base, that they'll get cornered by other players, and it's going to be an interesting way to
In a previous update, they said that you'll be able to, like, it's not tied into, like, when you create your character, you don't say, hey, I'm House Harkonnen, House Atreides, or whatever the case is, like, or Fremen, or you don't lock that in the character creation as part of the world and whatever the story and the persistent universe. You'll be able to do missions for certain factions. You'll be able to align with factions. And if that's being recorded, what would make this even better is that, you know, these spice confrontations is that if you go there and it's like, well, most of my quests or most of my jobs, like I'm kind of like technically pro Atreides, or like that's who I align with. And as long as that's factored in, or that's the armor that you're wearing, and Harkonnen, and then if you're there and you're fighting for spice and you see like another Atreides person over there, and then over there you see like a Harkonnen person, then, you know, maybe you get, so, like, you know, not more points or whatever the case, like, you know, you get more rewards if you take out like a competing faction as well. Like, you know, don't just make it, you know what I mean? Like actually add more story to it. You know what I mean? Like if you go there and it's like, well, you know, almost like, you know, World of Warcraft, like Horde versus Alliance.
yeah,
Like,
that's
you
what I
go
was
there
about
and
to
you go
say.
like, and it's like, well, okay, let's just have like a big faction battle here.
Yeah,
at the same time.
I kind of imagined it as everyone was going to the location. Everyone did have allegiances with different factions, and
Yes.
depending on how, like, say, House Atreides, a group rocks up because, you know, you need to take the resource, the spice back to House Atreides, and then it adds to like a global influence.
Yeah.
That's how I was kind of imagining it. Kind of like, you know, how in Helldivers 2, how it's is it the galactic versus like the robots and the aliens, essentially? Yeah. So like everyone is fighting together. Like it's House Atreides versus Harkonnen versus X, Y, and Z. So you as a house would go like, okay, we need Atreides soldiers to go get that spice because Harkonnen is just, they're dominating this area. They're beating us. That's how I kind of imagined it. But I really hope they do something like that, because nothing feels better especially in an MMO sense, where you're all working together towards one common goal. And I think Guild Wars 2 did something similar to this, and I really enjoyed it. You would do like, what was it? They're like, there was definitely world events and stuff like that, but that didn't really have to do with your faction. It was more so, you were all competing for spots on the map, and I think it was an instance battle or something like that. But there was like, you know, 100 players versus another 100 players, and you were kind of playing like capture the flag. But it all went towards like a global points thing. Yeah, I could be dicing that up badly, but there was essentially something like that. And I think to have Arrakis involve the houses and really make their houses feel like almost like Gryffindor, Slytherin, and stuff like that would be a really cool decision, because it's not just, then it doesn't feel like a free for all, you know?
Yeah.
And then people,
or it doesn't feel like more like an isolated experience, like, because their previous game Conan, it's more like you're just thrown into this harsh world and you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not part of a larger, well, you are and you aren't, but like, yeah. So it'd be interesting to see like how they handle the politics. And they said that they're going to deal with that in the houses and stuff. So I think at this point they need to not necessarily like show you exactly how it all works, but give you an overview of, to say like, hey, this is how siding with houses or like aligning with different factions, or how the politics is going to work and how that factors into like the persistent universe or or mechanics or quests or PvP or PvE and how that all fits in.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. We'll see. I'm starting to get excited about this, and yeah, hopefully I don't get disappointed, which it can can easily happen with an MMO. What did you want to jump to now?
We can do some game stuff. There's
Sure.
a few game stories to get through. We'll go into the world of console gaming and the PS5 Pro and GTA 6.
All right.
So the PS5 Pro is, beefed up specs. Like, we've talked about it. And, the high level, it's got custom AI hardware. It's got like a beefed up GPU. Apparently it's like 2 to 3 times ray tracing performance. Sony has got their own version of DLSS that's dependent on, that uses AI called PSSR or PSR, whatever it's going to be called, and for upscaling. And so, so like this GPU is meant to boost the visual fidelity of PS5 games. Whether or not that's needed at this point in the life cycle, you may or may not agree, but a lot of people are excited for it, and it's on track for release later this year. There's nothing official about it, but there's just been so many leaks that it's all but confirmed at this point. So a lot of people are excited because it's like, well, because GTA 6 is not coming to PC at launch. It's obviously going to come at some point, but it could take Rockstar 2 years. We don't know. And if GTA 5 is still on track for 2025, it may not get on PC until there's a 6090. You know what I'm saying?
Jesus.
Like which is like, sure, that'll be the absolute best way to play, but nobody's going to wait 2 years to play the game, like potentially.
Yeah.
Like it might be 6 months for all we know. So you're going to play it on console. And what are your choices? Your choices are Xbox Series X, S, PlayStation 5, or this PlayStation 5 Pro. The PlayStation 5 Pro will be the most powerful console. So it's like people will buy this console just to play GTA 6 because it's going to be the best way to play it.
Yeah.
Plus, there'll be other games. So essentially what's leaked now is that we're now getting to the point where people are just getting into like the finer details. So like, games will launch with a sticker or a label that says PS5 Pro Enhanced, which kind of like they did for like, when there was PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, like when they did those refreshes for 4K TVs, like it was like a Xbox One X Enhanced or PS4 Pro Enhanced. And that just meant that it was like running in 4K or whatever the case is for those consoles. So for this one, PS5 Pro Enhanced is apparently covers 3 things, which is interesting. If there's a requirement for it to actually do everything in this, I kind of find it difficult that's the case. But it'll be great if they are. So basically, a PS5 Pro Enhanced game will mean that it's got an improved resolution compared to the PS5 version.
Okay.
So whether that's with upscaling, so it's basically going to be running at 4K, let's say.
Yeah.
And it's going to increase the frame rate compared to the PS5 version. So people are expecting that means 60 FPS as standard, right? Because there's still games that you can play in like 30 FPS mode.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that it's going to have include PS5 Pro ray tracing effects. So basically, this sticker, in the best case scenario, means that you're getting that the resolution is higher, the max resolution is higher, the frame rate's higher, and it's got better ray tracing. So those 3 things. I don't think it's going to be like if you have 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3, you can't get the sticker. I don't think it's that case. I think it's probably just 1 out of 3, one of those 3 things.
Yeah.
And it's PS5 Pro Enhanced. It'll be so. With that, people are expecting that. All right, so that just means 4K 60 for every PS5 Pro game, which is a fair enough assumption to make because that's what you would expect, right? But and this is not like set in stone, but Digital Foundry, which of course they, experts at gaming hardware, they just, they sit there and work out how a frame is rendered, like, like what techniques are going on, what the CPU is doing, what the GPU is doing, what's in the render pipeline for the GPU, what this effect does, what, like, you know, if you look at when you go to the settings and you change the settings in a game and you go, I'm going to set the anisotropic filtering to 16 times from 4 times. Like, do you you just do it, but like, do you really know what it's doing?
Yeah, these
you know,
guys
stuff
dive
like texture
so
quality,
deep.
The stuff like texture quality, yeah, obviously you know what that means, but there's like a lot of settings, like when you're PC gaming, right? Like you crank things up, you're like, I don't know what that does really, but I'm just going to turn it up. So basically, so they know, they're experts, so they're not basing this information on having access to a PS5 Pro dev kit or even GTA 6, you know, however its engine works and stuff like that. So basically, they're saying that if GTA 6 is targeting 30 FPS on consoles, so that is like Xbox Series X and PS5 Pro. Let's say the top mode, like the 4K mode, is targeting 30 FPS with upscaling, with or without ray tracing. That's what it's targeting. Then a PS5 Pro version running that version of the game won't necessarily be able to just bump that up to double the frame rate to 60 FPS. And the reason for that comes down to the CPU, because the CPU is only 10% faster than the Pro versus the current PS5. And a lot of games on console are CPU limited when it comes to being able to run at a higher frame rate, at a higher resolution. So, and you know, like going from 30 to 60 FPS is like halving the frame time in terms of like the render pipeline. So like there's a lot that goes into it. It's like, it's not as simple as like going from 30 to 60 isn't...
Well, it's double.
As easy as you think, right? So if you look at like on the PC GPU space, you know, like a game might run at like 36 FPS on a 4060, but then you go to like a 4080 and it's like 64 and it's like double the performance. But that's like, you know, it is like a way more beefier or whatever the case is. Or like even if you go from like a 4060 to a 4070, like you might only get like an extra 5 FPS in like a game or 7 FPS.
Yeah.
Like doubling is usually unheard of.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, so like if GTA 6 is like 30 FPS on the PS5 Pro and people buy it just for GTA 6 and then they learn that, like, you know how like reactionary like a lot of gamers are on X and Reddit and stuff, they'll be throwing their PS5 Pros in the bin saying like, I bought GTA 6 and I can only play at 30 FPS. What is Sony doing?
I agree with those gamers. I am one of those gamers. Look, Digital Foundry is really the gold standard when it comes to diving deep into how pieces of hardware work with games. Like if they're suspecting that this is going to be the case with GTA 6, I'm leaning towards more of them being right. However, you're buying a PlayStation 5 Pro, and because the CPU is only a 10% increase compared to the PS5, that is not Pro. Like, you buy the PS5 Pro, and yes, I understand that there is...
The GPU is way more powerful and the ray tracing, but...
Sure, okay, that's fine. This is the most anticipated game of all time.
This will move hardware. That's the thing, right?
Yes,
like,
and if I want to play the most anticipated game of all time on my Pro console, why am I not playing it at 60 FPS? This is garbage,
GTA
man.
GTA 6 comes out, there'll be countless people that walk into like a game store or retail store.
Yeah.
Or it will just go online, right? Be like, okay, GTA 6 is out. I'm going to add that to cart or buy that at the counter. I say, well, I want a PS5 Pro. And they say, well, it's sold out. Okay. Can I have a PS5? Oh, no, we've sold out. Okay. I'll take the Xbox Series X and give me the Xbox version of the game. Like, that's what will happen. People will go out buy GTA 6 and the hardware to play it on.
Yeah, but
And it won't matter. Like, it'll just be, they'll just go down the list of the hardware.
Yeah, yeah, of course there is going to be a
gonna
portion of people that are doing that. But when I'm buying something with Pro in the title, I want a professional experience with it. I think this is Sony's fault, really. This is like it sounds like from what if I didn't know as much as I do about the gaming industry, hardware, etc., and I just look at this as face value, and I am looking forward to the most anticipated game of all time. I'm like, okay, I want to get that, and I want to get it on the best console that I can buy. And the difference between the best console and the one down isn't that much difference if I'm just playing this game.
Yeah,
this sucks.
But the way they say it is that like they're going also by what Rockstar has done in the past. So if you look at GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 on console, they were 30 FPS games. So they the way they say it is that like Rockstar goes for max simulation over performance, right? It's all about the detail in the world versus just raw, like, you know, making the game run as fast as possible. So like if the game is then built to be 30 FPS on PS5 and Xbox, and then a PS5 Pro comes around, there's no magic way to, there's no like way, like they're saying like based on just the CPU and stuff like that, and what they know is that it won't just be able to magically run at 60 FPS. It'll just still be 30 FPS.
That is some of the laziest stuff I've ever heard. Can I just talk about how much money GTA Online makes per quarter? Didn't we say it was just over $200 million a quarter?
I'm not sure, but yeah, I wouldn't be. I mean, it prints
what
money.
are we doing here, Kosta? You're telling me that with these hardware specifications, that there was no way, there isn't a possible chance that you could get the game to run at 60 FPS on a PS5 Pro? Oh, how long were they developing this? What is like? Maybe I'm expecting too much, but like
because of the simulation
30 FPS.
of yeah. So like the way they so like you're going to like that. Okay, I'll go there. Quote: You're going to see different and vastly improved graphical representations on the PS5 Pro by virtue of the fact that it has a much bigger GPU and machine-based upscaling. These are two really good things. But when your CPU is just 10% faster, you're not going to be seeing huge benefits to games that are CPU limited. And the reason why Rockstar games are CPU limited is because of the simulation of these big open worlds. A lot of that is dependent on CPU cycles. So if that's the case with GTA 6, then it's not going to run at 60 FPS.
What does Cyberpunk run at?
If they, I think that has a performance mode on console. I'm not sure.
Is it above 30 FPS?
If they have a performance mode with GTA 6, and that'll just put this all to rest if Rockstar came out and said that, yeah, we're going to have a performance mode, and that just means you're going to have 60 FPS, right?
Yes. This is I don't understand what they're doing because it annoys me. It actually, excuse my French, shits me to tears. Because
would you play GTA 6 if it's
of course I'm going to play GTA 6. Of course I'm going to, but I'm going to be upset about it if I'm like throwing up when I'm spinning the camera. This is.
When's the last time you played a 30 FPS game?
When I plugged in my Nintendo Switch on the plane. Like this is.
Yeah. I
don't think Rockstar has a single excuse in the book to say that this game doesn't have the capabilities of 60 FPS. How old are we? Like, how long have we been playing games at 30 FPS? This game, I'm looking at Derek's story here. It made this franchise $8.33 billion.
Yep.
Billion. What? And you're gonna release the most anticipated game of all time? Oh yeah, I reckon it's. We can't because the world's a simulation. Shut up. You work it out. I don't care how you do it. If you want to be able to delay it, Like, it should come with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, I still don't like quite get it either. Like, I think like wouldn't then they be able to just like let's say for example like it runs at 4K 30 on the PS5 and that 4K 30 is upscaled using the PS5's current upscaling
Yep.
to hit like 4K 30 and it's
Yep.
the same on Xbox Series X.
Yep.
So then let's say you've got the PS5 Pro and you've got machine-based upscaling that can make it look way better than the PS5 version. Like, then wouldn't that be able to then, even if you're like upscaling from a lower resolution, be able to do a 60 FPS mode a lot more easier, and with better image quality as well.
I don't
because
even.
the GPU can do ray tracing. So yeah, so I get like the CPU, like if it's CPU limited, but the thing is like CPU limited games on PC isn't really a thing until like unless you're playing at 1080p. Because when you go to higher resolutions, it's like as far as I'm not testing like GPUs on like an old CPU, so maybe it's just because it's older architecture. So there's the understanding that it's just because PS5 and Xbox they used like older CPUs from 4 or 5 years ago because that's how long ago these consoles were designed. That they're not going to be able to compete. Like if you look at a modern PC with a modern CPU, if you're gaming at 1440p or 4K, you're pretty much 100% or close to reliant on the GPU. So that's why, like, if it's like a beefier GPU, shouldn't that be 90% of what's the reason for the performance?
I want to know what Cyberpunk runs at. Cyberpunk
On PS5.
Yeah.
I think there's a performance mode.
Cyberpunk 2077 PS5 FPS. 60 FPS performance mode. If GTA 6 doesn't release with I don't care if the resolution isn't native 4K and it's just shy of it. The game needs to be able to move in 60 FPS. I don't think there is a single excuse that Rockstar or Sony or whatever, like, come on, what are we doing now? Like, what, we're still playing games at 30 FPS in 2024?
They've got thousands of people working on this game, right? Surely they've got like an engine team that's just optimizing this, like working on a performance mode.
Yeah, and aren't Rockstar like killing their developers or something like that? Because
not anymore.
No, not anymore. No, they only kill them. They're not allowed to
like
go home.
It's right though. Like considering like the hype for this game, like you would expect that. I mean, and Rockstar like have their finger on the pulse. They know that people, like the hardcore community, is like, like when a game is announced, whatever, like 60 FPS mode, ? Like on console, it's like, and that's like a deal breaker. So sure, you would assume that then that A, they're aware of that, and then B, have the resources to, at the very least, do whatever they can to try and get that into the game.
They've got the resources. They've made $8.4 billion since the release of GTA 5. That is, name another game that has even come close to that. I don't think there is one. I think that might be the most money generated from a video game of all time.
I think so, yeah. It would have to be.
So like what? And also Take-Two, I'm sure there is a little bit of like breathing down on Rockstar. Like, hey, come on, let's get the new one out. And let's make another $8.4 billion. But they've clearly shown through.
They've shown that like there's such a long tail on this. It's like whenever GTA 6 comes out, it's like it's minimum.
Yes, it's a $1 billion game.
10-year project, and like it's like it's going to be supported for like 5 years minimum.
Easily.
Like it's not. You don't need to release like a GTA 7 within 4 or 5 years at least. When with other games, it's like, well, you want a sequel every couple of years or whatever the case is because you want to keep it fresh or whatever. Whereas GTA 6 is like, well, forget about it. That'll be like the game for a decade almost.
Yeah, heavy lays the crown, and with that,
there comes expectations.
100%. And I don't expect this out of, I mean, I think 30 FPS is a thing of the past, really, unless you're on like, you know, the Nintendo Switch and you can carry it around or whatever. But
yeah,
for Grand Theft Auto, this is the biggest gaming franchise of all time. Like, I expect every single bell and whistle with this. It's when did GTA 5 come out? In like 2012?
Yeah, it was like a 360 PS3 game, but then it obviously was enhanced like a couple of years later for the PS4 Pro and the PS4 and Xbox One, and then came out on PC.
Rockstar had the blueprints for the PS5, the PS5 Pro for, let's just say, 5 years. They've got $8.4 billion. Well, they've been working on this game for, But the problem is as well, is like this sort of stuff doesn't happen until the very end. Like optimizing performance, like it's a process that happens because they're working towards a hardware spec. But like the actual optimization, like that happens right near the end. I just can't get behind any of these excuses. These are garbage excuses, Kosta. We're talking about Rockstar, not some like team of 5 developers that are in their basement. Like, you know, this is they're the Don, and like just to even the audacity to come out and not them come out and say, but like it's looking like it's going to be a 30 FPS game. If there isn't a performance mode on this, it's actually embarrassing, I think. Yeah. They should be ashamed of themselves. If they can't, in 10 years, 12 years of developing, they can't get 60 FPS to work on the newest and most popular game of all time. Now I won't go out and buy a PS5 Pro. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. Why would I do it? Well, I want to pay the what will be the what is the most anticipated game of all time. Oh, don't worry about that. I'll just wait 2 years and get it on PC and play it at 240 FPS. I think you'll be playing with that, but I'm not. You know, I'll play it at least at 100 FPS. I'm not messing around with 30 FPS. You know, I grew up. Like, you know, this is nothing gets me more fired up than when 30 FPS makes me sick, Kosta. Let's move on before I'll keep going. I swear to God. Quick one in the world of Xbox. So there's an all digital Xbox Series X that's been rumored for a while to come out this year. This was that one that leaked during like where it was like a cylinder that was like apparently an old version of it. It wasn't like an Xbox, it was an X cylinder. Well, apparently they're not going to do the X cylinder. Wonder who put those two together. So the digital Xbox Series X is basically just a white version of the current console that just doesn't have a disc drive. Very cool. So so it's a similar thing, and apparently it's got improved thermals, so like improved cooling and stuff like that. But apart from that, it's basically the same console, just all digital. It may have like a more efficient node, like the PS5 Slim, to make it more affordable to produce. But so that's apparently coming out this year. So it's not super exciting, but because it's not like a pro version, or it doesn't look like Xbox is actually going to be doing that this time around. Oh, that's disappointing. But the interesting Xbox story is improved heatsink. I'm reading here, which is improved. No. The other story that Xbox had. So Phil Spencer had an interview with Polygon, talked about a whole bunch of things, but then they asked him about like, you know, how would you feel about like, you know, Epic Game Store or itch.io or other storefronts going on Xbox, and instead of saying no, because consoles are like a closed ecosystem and have been for a while, he's saying that you know, if you look at PC and Windows, you wouldn't blink twice if, you know, because of, you know, you wouldn't blink twice the fact that you've got like Steam, Epic Game Store, and all the other Battle.net, whatever the case is. That's interesting. You just pick the experience, and there's value in that.
So he's basically suggesting that he's for it. Like, you know, if there was...
Interesting.
So this could potentially mean like something like Steam or the Epic Game Store on Xbox.
Wow.
Now, this would be like how it actually work would be interesting to know. So, but like for example, like, you know, everybody has like a massive Steam library, and a lot of these games are available on Xbox.
Yeah.
But it is like a different version of the game. So there's publisher deals and there's all sorts of licensing deals. So like how it would all work is probably way more complicated than simply just putting Steam on an Xbox.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But for example, like if you were to be able to like link your accounts and then being like, okay, so these Steam games are available on Xbox, so now you can play them on your Xbox. So then you basically just got like a Steam box as well as like as a console.
I like
You know
that.
what I mean? Like,
yeah. Do you think this
so
would
that
hurt Game Pass?
No, I think the Microsoft is all in on Game Pass.
Yeah, but having other options like Steam, the Epic Game Store and stuff like that.
It adds value.
What was that? Sorry.
It adds instant value to the console, and I think they're just looking for more customers at this point.
That's fair.
Because the interview was interesting, but like Phil Spencer doesn't talk in specifics. Like he doesn't say, "Hey, like Epic Game Store is coming to Xbox this fall. We've worked out a deal with Epic, and we're trying to do the same thing with Valve." You know what I mean? Like he doesn't say specific things. Like he hinted at, you know, there's going to be more Xbox games that will make their way to other platforms, and he talked about like Gen Z to say like they, you know, like the way young people today play games is very different to how people grew up with consoles. It's like if you want to play Mario, you play on a Nintendo, you know, or a Sega or a PlayStation, and it's these ecosystems that if you want to play games, you have to have one of these consoles. Now kids are growing up with like smartphones and tablets and Roblox and the cloud and iPads, and so they don't associate gaming with a PlayStation.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
They've got laptops, they've got PCs. Younger people playing games on PC. They play Minecraft, they got Roblox on PC, they got Steam, they got access to whatever they have on PC. So they don't, so they, you know, and a lot of these games are available on multiple platforms. And so there is an expectation that these platforms need to be more open. So that's like, you know, Microsoft is also talking about like how like there's people, the console market is basically the same. Like there aren't 100 million more consoles out there than there were 10 years ago. It's roughly the same amount. So like, you know, having like something like, you know, like it dilutes what you consider an Xbox or a console to be by being able to like say, let's say get an Xbox Series X and you got Game Pass. You go, all right, sweet, I can play all these games. Then you go install Steam and you go, oh, I've got these 10 games on Steam. I can just play on Xbox as well. You know what I mean? Then it's like, well, is it, what is it? But then it's just giving you more choice.
Do you think the deals would align? Because I'm just trying to think. Like, I'm all for this, by the way. I think it's incredible if it does come to fruition. But you know,
like it doesn't compute. But then you're like, well, why not?
Yeah, why not? Of course. Steam summer sale, winter sale. You know, there's always a sale on at Steam. Do you think the prices for those discounted games would align with Xbox store prices? They'd have to, right? Because, or unless a deal is somehow,
no, it'll be
I don't know.
be like completely open, right? So it's like a lot of games on like PlayStation, the PlayStation Store. Like if you buy a digital console, like if you buy the digital PS5, you're essentially locking yourself in to whatever prices Sony and third parties dictate on a single platform. Now on PC, there is a history of games being cheaper for PC.
Definitely.
So that's why, like, you know, digital games, especially digital, right? Digital is cheaper. So there is an expectation that a digital game is not going to be as expensive. But there are games like, you know, like big games that come out on console and PC that they have the full price on Steam. Like, you know, like what is it, $60 US, $70, like that happens. But for most cases, digital games are cheaper. So like there is that expectation. But like if you have a digital PS5, like you're beholden to whatever prices they set. There's no other alternative. There's no I can buy it on Steam, or I can actually go out and get it cheaper at like a JB Hi-Fi, because the games come out, but they're selling it $10 cheaper. You have to buy the $10 more expensive digital version because your console is digital, and there's only one storefront, so to speak.
So, okay, I'm trying to think in Microsoft's shoes. Why would they allow Steam to jump onto their platform and discount their games then?
They're just piggybacking onto what's popular. Well, but they've already done it on PC, right? So they've given, well, not necessarily given up, but they've realized that there's no point having their games exclusive to the Windows Store. You know what I mean? Like initially, that's what the case was. And
which stinks, by the
still
way.
Xbox still has that legacy of like Game Pass. Like they have to be, it's through the Microsoft Store, and that's one of the worst things about Xbox on PC is that they're beholden to the Microsoft Store. But recently, or a year ago or 2 years ago, it had added support for x86 or like standard PC programs.
Yeah.
So that meant that they could, now they can add older games and whatever the case. Anyway, like basically, but then they also the point is like they, if Forza is on their Game Pass app, it's on the Microsoft Store, but it's also on Steam, and Forza is also on Epic Game. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure if it's on the Epic Game Store, but let's just assume it is. So they're putting the game on wherever people are playing on PC.
Yeah, I like it.
So their philosophy in the PC space, and it's all like under the Xbox brand. So it's like, well, Xbox means more than just console now. So it's well, if they bring down the barriers on the home console too, and they say, well, okay, we can have Steam running on the console. We can have other storefronts, digital storefronts, or like itch.io, which is like an indie storefront, which allows indie developers to like sell games directly and get a big lion share of the profit. Now, like, what's the benefit for Microsoft? The benefit for Microsoft is the perception of the console, for it to become
more than
seen
just
as
Xbox.
Like, hey, if you want like access to more things, more choice, then get an Xbox.
Yeah.
Over the closed wall garden that is PlayStation.
Yeah. I like it. I really do. They must be really confident in Game Pass, because look, Game Pass is probably the best subscription. Like if you just want a continuously growing catalog of games, Game Pass is literally a no-brainer. It is the selection of games that are on there is astounding for the amount of money that you're paying, and that is only going to keep growing. However, I think doesn't Epic Games have a similar kind of service? I don't know if it's subscription. They give a free game. They're free, aren't they?
Yeah, Epic Game Store is going to want to be on Xbox, right? Because they just don't like paying licensing fees or whatever the case is, right? So like
shout
their
out
big
Apple.
Court battle, exactly right. The big court battle with Apple is all about they don't like the fact that you have to pay Apple a big cut, but it's standard anyway. Like that's whatever the percentage is pretty much what everybody's doing in terms of like storefronts and things like that.
Oh, they don't like Apple,
but they have to use Apple's systems for payment processing and other user sort of things. So like, so Fortnite on iPad or iPhone has to like, and so Epic doesn't like that, but they won their court case. So they're going to release Epic Game Store on Apple, or it's either out or coming soon or whatever the case is. So that's a precedent to say that if Microsoft is entertaining the idea, then Epic will be all for bringing it, and that might be the first one that comes to Xbox.
I love this.
And whether it just be for Fortnite initially, we don't know. Like where I don't quite get is like how it works for like third-party games and like existing. Like if you've purchased it on PC, can you play it on Xbox if it's available on Xbox, or how does that work? Or because like licensing deals are specific to platforms. It's like, well, if you buy it on PC, you're buying the game, but you don't own the game, if you know what I mean. Like
so like say
buying
Spider-Man,
a license for the game to play the game, right?
Yeah. Say if I bought Spider-Man on Steam, can I then?
Yeah, you don't own Spider-Man, right? Like you don't own the IP. You own
the license to
copy-
play it.
the license or a copy of a copy to play the game on this platform. You know,
Yeah.
however that deal is structured. Whereas, you know, with Xbox's Play Anywhere, you buy it once and you can play it on console and PC.
Yeah.
But you know, like, but then you got like cross-platform games. Like, let's say you got like Diablo 4. You can, if you're playing on Xbox, you can play against You can play with PS5 players and PC players because you're all on Battle.net.
Yeah.
But if you jump on PC, you have to buy the game again, or if you jump on PS5, you have to buy the game again because they're different versions. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing, like how it'll work exactly, and whether or not you can just upgrade to play it on more than one platform for a lower cost, or you have to rebuy the game on console because it's a different storefront. Then does that negate the whole reason to have, like if you got Steam on Xbox, but you have to buy the game twice on Steam to play it on either PC or Xbox?
Yeah, that
what's
sucks.
the point at that stage, right? It's like, well, that doesn't solve the choice, or like doesn't solve the, or that doesn't like add the value that you'd expect.
Yeah, the freedom will end up costing you more money. And then there's also the problem with exclusivity deals. So like say Spider-Man, for example, is on Steam on PC, but let's say they release the new game because of the success of Helldivers 2, and Sony is also bringing down its walled garden. Let's say they release the new Spider-Man on the new PlayStation, and then they wait a year, and then they release it on Steam on PC. If Steam is now on the Xbox, I don't have to,
no.
Can I just play Sony?
You would assume that no, that's definitely not.
Yeah, so that's kind of sucks. It's not the Steam's full library then, right? It's
because then
the majority of games,
curated.
but
It'll be
all of them.
Yeah, they'd have to make deals with Valve and things like that.
Yeah, I'm for it, but I can see, and as you were saying earlier, it's like this could get really messy.
But as well, because if you've got multiple storefronts selling you the same thing,
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like then it's an interesting concept, and I think there'll be a way for it to work. And if they get it to work, then that's a good thing, because consoles need to evolve beyond being these like closed ecosystems. They need to be more open.
Yeah.
That's why the idea of like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally is exciting, because it's just a handheld PC. It's like what games you can play on your PC, you can play on your handheld.
Yeah, I like it. Do you want to talk about some embarrassing space junk?
Or should we do the AI stuff first and then end with the space junk?
Yep, no worries.
A couple of AI stories that we mentioned in the so it's Nuclear and Copilot. So we talked about this a while ago. It might have been in one of our test podcast recordings. We were just setting up and we're just talking about a few stories. There was a story about Microsoft hiring a principal program manager of nuclear technology to develop small modular microreactors, nuclear microreactors, portable ones that you can transport and plug in.
Yeah.
This is to run data centers. This was about a year or so ago. Obviously, back then AI was the big new thing, and now it's even bigger. So in my story, I open up with a couple of
Simpsons GIF in there.
I was about to say, look at the image. Like, I spent as much time on that main image and finding a couple of GIFs as I did writing the story.
Oh, I love you. That is so good. Go on. Sorry, I just love that so much. I can hear the intro song playing in my head.
Yep. So Microsoft and OpenAI are teaming up to build a $100 billion AI supercomputer. These are just recent headlines on Tweakdown.
Yeah.
Or recent stories. Amazon is planning to spend $150 billion on data centers. Meta is planning to install 50,000 NVIDIA Actually, I think that's 250,000. It's a typo. I'll have to fix that. H100 GPUs by the end of this year. Mind-boggling projects with GPU hardware. like running, and GPUs draw a lot of power. So I said the power bills are going to be astronomical for these data centers. This is a big problem because it's actually puts strain on grids and current energy.
Mm-hmm.
And energy has remained flat for like the past 10 years or so in terms of the amount of energy consumption in the US. It's like people aren't, but that's growing now. Like it actually has remained flat for a while. Like I think from about 2000 to about 2015, like it was pretty flat in terms of the amount of energy people were using. But now it's growing primarily because of AI. So the latest story is basically that the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm spoke to Axiom and basically said that they are aware of the AI power issue, and they are speaking to companies like Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, Amazon, Nvidia, etc., to look at solving the problem. They don't see AI. She was clear to say that AI is not the problem. AI is going to help solve problems. So this is not a case of them cracking down on AI. It's them basically saying that they need to figure out how they're going to power all this stuff. So they also keen to get the ball rolling on the small modular reactor tech that Microsoft was looking at. So essentially, like, this technology is basically portable nuclear microreactors.
Wow.
This technology is still in development, and it's still a couple of years, apparently like almost 4 years at best. So they want to accelerate that.
Yeah.
Because there's regulations and red tape around developing that technology that actually is the reason for the delay, because you just have to go through so many steps when it comes to new nuclear technology. So they could be accelerating that to get Microsoft to install these microreactors. But also they're looking at like reopening nuclear plants and whatever the case is. So nuclear energy accounts for 20% of current US power generation. In some countries it's higher, but in the US it's actually pretty low. But nuclear energy is quote unquote the cleanest energy that can deliver that amount of power.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at a solar farm, you're looking at a massive solar farm.
Yeah.
If you're looking at wind, you're looking at just huge amounts of space. Whereas a microreactor is like tiny, portable, efficient, clean to a degree, because there's obviously...
Besides the waste. The waste is a problem.
And then the risks. But like I guess like the big takeaway is like, is AI going to turn every city into Springfield from The Simpsons? There's just going to be a nuclear plant.
As long as Homer Simpson is in the one operating the plant, I don't think we'll have a problem. Yeah, I think there is. Look, nuclear power plants, they're not like Chernobyl anymore, or Fukushima. It is,
but there is that stigma.
There is stigma with it.
Fukushima, it wasn't that long ago. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, but it didn't end up in Chernobyl.
Yeah. The risk is still there.
Of course there is. And, they have a, Chernobyl is probably the worst one out of all of them. That stains their track record. But look, if we want to move forward and energy is the main component to powering all of our devices and also reducing energy bills for everyday people. Like, we live in Australia. Our energy cost, and Adelaide in particular, I think, is the most expensive location in the world for energy. Like, out of it,
Australia's out of control.
Australia is ridiculous. And considering how big our continent is and how much spare space we have, why don't we have a massive nuclear power plant right in the middle of the Simpson Desert? In the Simpson Desert with power lines running out to every single state. Yes, Australia is huge, and that would probably be a 25-year, 30-year, maybe even 50-year project. But once that plant would be set, once it's set up, our energy costs would be reduced.
There's just that stigma, right? It's like people are for nuclear energy, right? But then it's like, but what if we build it, 2 blocks from where you're living?
Yeah, nah, don't do that. Put it in the Simpson
What would you
Desert.
say? You'd be like, no, put it somewhere. That's what you're saying, like put it far. That's the problem, is that like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and feed it out to every state.
Yeah, but it needs to be like, because then you got to have like generators and, substations, and it blows out the cost to astronomical levels. The whole point of nuclear energy is that it's efficient if it's right there powering the city.
Yeah, I suppose. But you know, I'm trying to solve, like, hit two
But the
birds
thing
with one
with this
stone.
is that you've got a nuclear microreactor
Yeah, it's in your
just
pocket.
at the data center.
Yeah, that's
so like
sick.
you're working at the data center knowing that there's just you walk past this nuclear microreactor on your way to work.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, it's going to be walled off and secure. Like, but like, it's essentially going to be like these nuclear microreactors everywhere. Because like the thing with AI is that it's insane, right? Like the way I put in there, like 150 billion on this data center. These companies are spending 110 billion. Like, how much do you think?
So much money.
How much hardware is that, right? That's like Meta's like 200,000 plus GPUs. And then these other companies are going 100,000 GPUs, 210,000, 5,000. And all that, like each one, let's say it draws like hundreds of watts. You times that by 100,000 is like an insane amount of power, right? You're looking that puts a strain on things. So then it's like, okay, so then how do we solve that? We use nuclear power.
Yeah.
So that means that all these data centers are going to have nuclear power. Where do these data centers need to be? They need to be close to areas because of latency.
Yep.
And you're not going to have this data center like segregated or out in the middle of nowhere just because of safety or just so you don't have to deal with concerns over having nuclear power that close to people. But then you've got 1,000 people working at that data center.
Yeah, and how do they feel about it?
You've got people working there. How do they feel about it?
Yeah, it's hard. That's why I was suggesting to put the plant in the middle of one for the location. There's like I just don't want Adelaide to benefit. Like, of course I'd love that, but like it makes sense to me to put it in the direct center of the country so every state can benefit from this. And it will also I think it would be easier to pass get people behind the project because it would be so far away. So if there was a problem, you know, it's 10 hours away. It's not, you know, around the corner. I think the nuclear power plant's on fire. Like I think it would be a lot easier for people to go, okay, it still makes me upset. Or it still makes me worried, but you know, it's 10 hours and it's in the middle of the desert. There's nothing there besides sand, and you know, sunburn. But I like this. I do because I am for nuclear energy.
Actually, the microreactor technology is actually quite interesting.
It's very cool.
It is because it's designed obviously to be safer than current. It's not like a giant nuclear plant, and it's not like, you know, a little like suitcase, whatever. It's just something that's transportable. So it's still going to be huge, right? It's still going to be big enough that it requires trucks to move or whatever. But it is like portable, so it can be disassembled, it can be set up. But then it also means it can be, you know, if there are issues with it, can be replaced a lot easier and designed to be more modular and things like that. But the thing with that, like technology, which, to be honest, if AI requires this much power, like I'm all for it because there's just no other way to get, like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, like what's the other option?
Like five, like multiply the coal power plants by 10. You know, go fossil fuel crazy, go natural gas crazy. Like, let's just burn shit and dig up and just, you know, like what are the
burn it all?
What are your choices?
Yeah,
like it is clean. Like it is dramatically cleaner than any of those options.
Absolutely.
Obviously, assuming that you can safely
dispose of the waste,
operate it and safely dispose of the waste. You're not looking at I mean, but you know, things go bad and you end up with fallout.
Fallout. That is cool. We'll keep our eyes on that story as it keeps developing because, like you said, I want to know how these massive data centers are being powered. And
yeah, because it's obviously that's not something that we take into consideration.
No.
Like the headline is like, hey, we're going to build a data center that's going to cost $100 billion and it's going to have 100,000 GPUs in it. It's like, okay, nice one. But it's like, so but that data center is going to require more power than, you know,
the state that it's in,
like 50 city blocks of like skyscrapers or whatever.
All right, let's hit some space news real quick and wrap this bad boy up here. So, astronauts aboard the International Space Station, they there's many challenges, obviously, with space, and one of them is spacewalks. That is is an event every time that they step outside of the floating laboratory. The majority of the time that they're stepping out, they are conducting repairs on, broken antennas, instruments, also doing upgrades as well. So when Crew Dragon, SpaceX's cargo spacecraft arrives, it usually arrives with a bunch of improvements that can be made to the ISS, or new experiments, or just general supplies. So space as astronauts need to just take a step out of the ISS, navigate around the edges of the laboratory, and then do repairs and improvements. Now, to do this, they need to have there's a unique set of tools, and they carry a bag out there to do that. Now, so a few astronauts on November 2, 2023, were conducting a spacewalk, and a tool bag worth approximately $100,000 escaped their clutches. This is funny, because the tool bag can now be spotted from the surface of Earth and is being tracked by astronomers. So you got it's just floating around in orbit. The astronauts came back, a part of the Crew 7 transportation. They came back and they actually talked about what happened. And yeah, essentially they were trying to latch the tool bag onto their belt or to the ISS, and they thought it was attached, and then one of them turned around and it's gone. And gone in space isn't like, oh, look, it's all the way over there. Like, gone might be like a meter out of your grasp, and you don't have enough lead, and you're like, well, I can't get that now, and it's just slowly floating away, and then there's nothing you can do. However, there's a video that is played in the article. I don't know if you can put that up there.
That's right. You see the bright little white dot.
Yeah. But there's also that GIF in the tweet there. Reese, if you can put that on the screen for the YouTube viewers, that is the tool bag just slowly detaching. And now it can be spotted from space. And where is that? There's a photo. Yes. It's, if you go down to the bottom of my article and click the ISS astronauts dropped a tool bag during a spacewalk, and you can see it here link. One of the astronauts aboard the ISS was trying to take a photo in the cupola, which is the module of the ISS where you can, it's mostly windows, and you can take photos of Earth. It's probably the most iconic part of the ISS, in my opinion. And he's trying to take a photo of Mount Fuji because he's Japanese, and he captures the photo, accidentally snaps a photo of the tool bag just floating around in space. Now, astronomers, they estimate that this tool bag will eventually just burn up in Earth's atmosphere. That is sad. But speaking of stuff that should have been,
or it would just be space debris. Yeah,
it'll just forever just orbit Earth. Eventually it'll get sucked in by gravity and then probably burn up. But speaking of things that should have entirely burnt up in Earth's atmosphere upon re-entry, a Florida man, he wasn't home at the time, but his son was. An object just blasted through his roof and both stories of his 2-story building. When he wasn't there, his son was home though, so he almost died. Now, NASA has launched an investigation into this object, and renowned astronomer Jonathan McDowell has kind of pieced it together. He's done this. I've sourced him plenty of times. he is fantastic at being able to like kind of distill down and accurately guess where the object came from, whether it's an asteroid, whether it's like based on sightings and timestamps and all of that. So Alejandro, the object smashed through the roof of, is it Alejandro?
Yeah, Alejandro.
Alejandro Oterio's home in Naples, Florida on March 8th. At the time, Oterio wasn't home, but his son was. Notably, the home's Nest camera managed to capture the sound of the object crashing through the crashing through the roof. The timestamp of 2:34 p.m. local time. That timestamp is important because as it is around the time when the US Space Command recorded the re-entry of space junk that was traced back to the International Space Station. So what has happened is the space junk was depleted batteries from the ISS, which was approximately the size of 2 refrigerators next to each other. And at the time, NASA said that where is the quote here? It conducted a thorough analysis of the debris and assessed that the pallet, which was jettisoned from the ISS, would harmlessly re-enter Earth's atmosphere.
And there wouldn't be any portion so that would survive re-entry.
Yes. So they were
Except a little bit did.
This should be fine. This should just burn up.
The photos that Alejandro posted, right? So obviously, so like that, in re-entry, like it shrinks down.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's burning up, and so like it looks like a little cylinder. So then, but then he posted photos of like his roof, where you see it like just the hole.
Yeah.
Then you see like the first floor, like going through the floor, and then the ceiling. So like obviously traveling at super fast speed, just like bam, strikes straight through the house, like from the roof.
Yeah.
All the way down to wherever, like basement or the floor or the first floor.
Yeah, it had a mass of 2.6 metric tons or 5,800 pounds. It was approximately twice the size of a refrigerator. And I think...
But now it's like a lot smaller.
Yeah, it's
so
like 2 pounds. I think it's 2 pounds. Yep. However, this
so
thing
it almost burnt up.
Blasted through his roof. I can just imagine the son sitting there with like a beer in his hand. He's just watching The Simpsons.
Know what's going on?
Yeah, and then you just hear whoosh, just straight through. You're like, oh my.
Like, what would you think? Like it came from like a plane, maybe?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't assume like that's space junk from the International Space Station.
No, I would think that someone's like a plane has gone down and like or parts of the plane are ripping off, and you know I might just be in that over that trajectory line. But yeah, this I think is crazy, and the Oterio is working with NASA to recover any damages to his property, which I think is like, you know, it's appropriate. But yeah, this is an extremely rare event. Usually NASA and other space agencies around the world are pretty good at determining whether an object that is jettisoned out of the ISS or, you know, defunct satellites or whatever, most of the time they do burn up, like the large majority of the time. But I'm guessing because their batteries, they didn't really do a proper assessment on whether or not it was going to burn up, and also the likelihood of it landing in someone's house
is pretty like astronomical. Because like, I mean, the Earth's surface isn't predominantly house.
Yeah, no, 85% of it's water. So the majority of
water,
like they say with asteroids, we only see a very small portion of the asteroids that are spotted in the sky because 85% of the planet is covered in water, or 80% of the planet is covered in water, and there's so many that are entering Earth's atmosphere. We never see them. We never see them because of the proximity from where they're entering over. It might be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or whatever. But we only see the ones that are going over land masses, and also the land masses that contain human life, not just city, not just, Yeah,
I mean, you look at Australia and
how big that is.
Pretty much like 95% 5% of us are all just like on the coast on the east side.
Yeah, we all live next to the ocean. We'll finish this episode off with a robot that makes me uncomfortable. A bunch of
this is
scientists.
Creepy behavior.
Yeah.
Robot or no?
This is a haunting robot, really. So a new study published in the journal Scientific Robots has detailed the creation of a robot that is capable of predicting when you smile and smiling before you complete your smile. Now, look, its smile, not the best. It's more of a grimace, if anything, and it could also be my sleep paralysis demon. It is.
Well, like, I mean,
it's called emo.
Like watching the video, right? Like when it's so casual, like it's funny. Like, you know, when they show like scientists or like robots, whatever, they just like, you just see them like putting like a face, like the silicone face on it.
Yeah.
Like, this is horror movie shit. Like you're just holding the face, right? Like if it's supposed to be humanoid, the more humanoid it looks, the more horrific it becomes when you're like, when they're doing things like when you see just the head or like no back of the head or just the face.
Yeah, I don't like
it. It's like RoboCop, right? Like when you take the thing off, you just see like a face just like slapped onto like the cybernetic thing, and it's creepy.
It is creepy. It gets like the closer it gets to human level facial expressions, the more it goes into the uncanny valley. But
also as well, like what's creepy is like when you like somebody who just mimics, you know, like smiling, whatever, like, you know, the fakeness of it. Like, you know, let's say, I mean, it not necessarily like it's a bad thing, but like, you know, people that, they might even just be socially awkward. Like, you know, it's awkward when somebody just like, you know, smiles and then, you know, then they put on a smile just to say hello and there's hello.
Yeah.
Fake smiles, and that's what it's doing. Like it's fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can kind of see through it, which is really weird, I think. Like, they're doing the exact same... they're triggering the exact same facial muscles to elicit that, you know, that shape on their mouth. But there's something... It's almost like you can see it in their eyes that it's not genuine. Like, even that bloke that's, you know, at the start of the video and he's having a smile at it, I think that's a weird smile. I'm just saying that's not. Yeah. That's what is he doing? Anyway,
because there's like how many like muscles that go into a smile? Like
so many. Yeah. The robot is named Emo. Bad name. Not good.
Because it signifies a bad fashion and bad music.
Yeah. Well, that's how an emo would smile. So I suppose it is accurate. Okay, so this is how it worked. They trained it on the team was able to train emo to detect smiles by performing self-modeling in front of it. This is a process that includes the robots initiating random facial movements, and then it trains all of its actuators and all of the components in its face. And once it was able to do that, they then fed it several hours of human facial expressions, which it was then able to distill down into when a smile is when it's about to happen, and then trigger its own smile. Now, why would they want to create something this haunting? They want this technology, I'm guessing, is going to be bootstrapped onto another piece of robotics, such as a robot that is designed to have a lot of dexterity with its hands and to be able to move a lot quicker. So I think a lot of these companies
talk, you would assume.
Yeah, they're kind of like they're building different parts of the humanoid robot. Like these engineers are concentrating on facial movement,
which is cool because then
it is cool.
You can license it or whatever, like use this tech for that, like building your robot. Like you don't have to. Like the thing is like if you're designing a robot, you don't have to like design everything from scratch. Like if somebody's worked out facial, or you can evolve it. Yeah.
It's kind of like the different components within like a phone or say a console, like, you know, the GPU is AMD, or, you the CPU is Intel, and but there's many more different components. So the lead author of the study said, in the future, when interacting with a robot, it will observe and interpret your facial expressions just like a real person, whereas delayed facial mimicry looks disingenuous. Facial co-expression feels more genuine because it requires correct inference of the human's emotional state for timely execution. Which is, I'm like...
When you boil it down to that.
Yes. I mean, you kind of suck the human essence out of it.
Emo.
But yeah, after reading that, you realize that this is a much more complicated problem than it is on the surface. It's like, well, you have to do it in a certain window of time. Like, it would be so weird if you were talking to a robot and then there was a 30-second delay and then it was just and smiling at you. You're like, well, what are you doing? Like, it's got to happen within a certain window of time. So the robot has to be able to react in a certain window of time for the expressions to feel genuine. I think it's a pretty cool piece of technology, despite it making me feel uncomfortable. But I think we're going to start to see more. Well, now that everything is going AI, and it has already been doing that, but now they're just calling machine learning AI. We're starting to see a bit more humanoid robots doing human things, which is pretty cool. That's all about I had for this episode. Did you have anything else?
No, I mean, we
are running out of time,
the usual time. But I think we covered pretty much most things. So.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple of things we missed. The we said Microsoft's game-changing Pixel technology in the in the intro, so maybe we'll just do that quickly.
Okay, all right, no worries.
Only because, if you say game changing,
that is true.
We should probably talk about.
There is a listener hanging on the edge of his seat. He's like, "Wait, there's game changing pixel technology."
Yeah, so it's a new patent from Microsoft, and it could revolutionize, specifically gaming on modern LED screens or displays, including OLED. So it's called Pixel Luminous for digital display technology. It involves an EM gate driver, which I think is a piece of hardware, but basically it would be software and hardware, like Windows or whatever the case is, that sends a signal to a row of pixels to control individual pixel brightness. Improve color accuracy, works with VRR, and can make parts of the screen brighter versus others, can be dimmer, and it can control all of that on a pixel basis. So it essentially would mean that, because OLED is already like self-lit pixels, right? So OLED doesn't need this sort of technology, realistically. But basically it could bring a level of like OLED brightness control to non-OLED displays. Which would be a game changer if it works, because it's so confusing, because patents, like there's a link in there, like if you read a patent, right, it's just so technical, because it's them. So basically it just gives you like a technical readout, like, with a couple of images and descriptions that are just purely scientific. So it's hard to gauge. Like, it's not really like a press release, like it's not explaining exactly what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you like the real world implementation of the technology. It's more like covering its bases on like legalese, so Microsoft can say that they own this technology. Yeah, and
there is like one like Achilles heel for it, is which actually, when you get to like variable refresh rate stuff, like, when G-Sync and FreeSync, and when you're gaming and the refresh rate changes, so that can cause like it to freak out and make certain parts brighter and mess up the actual brightness. But because it uses pulse width modulated signals, and because VRs change the frequency, the signals need to be a high. Like, anyway, it's a frequency based technology. So basically, as long as VRR is divisible or like a same as this technology is working, then it'll be okay. But then if the frame rate or whatever refresh rate is non-integer multiple, then you're going to get problems. So I don't know. Like the patents sounds interesting because pixel luminance for digital display technology is compatible with OLED, QLED, micro LED, and LCD, and IPS, and all the sort of displays. So basically, it breaks down through a thinger to be able to send on a per row basis in terms of to be able to light and control the contrast of pixels.
I like that.
By sending more like power through and like being in control. I don't know, like it's very scientific because it basically removes a lot of that stuff from the display.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how it works.
I'm struggling to understand it. I would need to see like a visual representation of the technology.
But if it could make like a non-OLED screen look more like an OLED display,
I'm all for it.
Then that's
sick. That's awesome.
That's a big plus. So that's basically what it is. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
A potential game changer because that'll make more sense for gaming.
Yeah, for sure. Now I want to see it more in practice. Like show me a game with it off and then show me a game with it on as well. I need a side by side.
Yeah, so like the way it doesn't actually explicitly state it, but the way it's like kind of described scientifically is to say that like if like you got an OLED and if there's a dark scene, like those pixels, a lot of pixels aren't turned on. If it's black, it's turned off. So it's pure black, infinite contrast, perfect contrast in a way.
Yeah.
So this would be able to control the brightness of pixels that displays can't do at the moment because it's all like zone based or a black light or however it works, and to do it on a per row basis and then be able to make them brighter or whatever to control that, then you would get an effect where it's basically pixel dimming like OLED, where it could essentially make those look as dim or black or turned off, make it kind of like give it a look of OLED.
Yeah.
But then
increase the
I don't
contrast.
understand how it works because tried reading the whole thing and it was like, this is getting into the weeds. Like like patents are always a little bit weird, but that's the kind of takeaway from it is that it's like pixel dimming OLED style tech.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
That would work on every display.
That's awesome. I want to hear more about this. Hopefully there's more news about it in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's
cool.
it. That's it for this week's episode.
Wrap it up.
Thank you very much for listening. If you've made it this far, please go head over to the YouTube, subscribe, like the video, comment, do all that jazz. If you're just on the audio, go head over to the YouTube. I think I said that wrong.
Check out the stories. Head to Tweakdown.
Yes, that's right. Head down to the description. If you wanted some further reading, there is a Google Docs link, and within that is all of the stories that we have talked about in this week's episode. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week with an even more jam-packed week of news. Do you have anything to sign this episode off with, Kosta?
No. Stay tuned for more for next week.
That's it. All right. Thank you very much for listening, guys. See ya.